When you have faith in God, you don't have to worry about the future. You just know it's all in His hands. You just go forward and do your best. Elder Bryan Mathison. There are periods in life when we feel like a small boat drifting in the middle of a dark ocean. Waves of anxiety continuously crash against the mind. What will tomorrow bring? Will my efforts lead anywhere? Will today's losses become meaningless? We often want to control everything with reason, wanting to foresee a path decades ahead before daring to take the next step. But the more we try to hold the future in our hands, the more exhausted we become. Because the future has never belonged to us. It is like the mist covering a forest at dawn. The further you look, the blurrier it gets. The harder you try to pierce through it, the more lost you become. That is why faith becomes the deepest refuge of the soul. There are things far beyond our comprehension. A seed buried deep in the earth does not know how it will become an ancient tree, yet it silently takes root. A baby bird does not understand how vast the sky is, yet its wings still learn to fly. Faith is just like that. It is not about seeing the whole path before walking, but daring to walk even without seeing the whole path. Much of human suffering comes from the constant desire for certainty. We want guarantees that love will not leave us, that our efforts will be rewarded, that tomorrow will go exactly as planned. But life has never signed a safety contract with anyone. It is ever-changing, always unpredictable, and always brings storms without warning. And when we try to resist all uncertainties, the soul gradually becomes rigid, as exhausted as a string stretched tight for too long. Faith in God brings a different kind of peace. The peace of knowing you do not have to carry the entire world on your shoulders. We only need to live kindly, do our best, and leave the rest in the hands of a being greater than ourselves. The strange thing is that when people stop panicking about the future, they truly begin to live. They no longer walk in despair, but in trust. Each day becomes an opportunity instead of a threat. And sometimes, the very paths that seem broken lead us to the most beautiful places in our lives, because there are doors that only open when we believe enough to keep moving forward, even when darkness still lies ahead. No matter what has happened to you in the past or what is going on in your life right now, it has no power to keep you from having an amazingly good future if you will walk by faith in God. God loves you. He wants you to live with victory over sin so you can possess His promises for your life today. Joyce Meyer. Some people live their entire lives as if carrying a dark room within their souls. They are trapped in old memories, past mistakes, unhealed wounds, or failures that slowly make them believe their lives are defined by the past. A single, painful moment becomes a life sentence. Stumble just once, and we start thinking of ourselves as failures. Suffer betrayal just once, and we imagine we are unworthy of love. And when present life is filled with hardships, it is so easy to believe the future will forever remain just as bleak. But faith in God shatters that invisible prison. No matter what has happened to you in the past or what is going on in your life right now, it has no power to keep you from having an amazingly good future if you will walk by faith in God. That is not just a comforting word for weary souls, but a profound psychological truth. Because when people believe that there is still hope for their lives, they begin to change how they live. Faith is like the dawn slipping through the cracks of a room, sealed for years. The darkness doesn't vanish instantly, but the light has already begun to win. The most terrifying thing is not failure, but the feeling that we no longer have a chance to rise again. Some are dragged down by the past, like an invisible chain. They live in an inferiority complex, in self-condemnation, believing they are not good enough to receive anything beautiful. But God does not see people the way they see themselves. Humans often look at the wounds. God looks at the capacity for healing. Humans see ashes. God sees the embers still smoldering within. He does not love you only after you are perfect. He loves you even when you are broken. That is why faith is not an escape from reality, but the strength that helps us rise above it. Those with faith no longer live as victims of circumstance. They understand that the past is just one chapter in life, not the entire book. A tree can still grow fiercely from scorched earth. A river will still find its way to the sea despite flowing through jagged rocks. And so it is with people. What happened to you does not determine where you will go, as long as your heart still holds the light of belief. God loves you. Perhaps that is something many have heard countless times, but never truly felt. Because when someone believes they are loved unconditionally, they start to live differently. They no longer run from themselves. They no longer drown in guilt or despair, as if that were their true nature. Instead, they rise up, fight the darkness within, and learn to live victoriously, not by their own fragile human strength, but by the belief that there is always a hand lifting them up after every fall. And sometimes, the greatest miracle is not life-changing instantly, but a once desperate soul being able to smile and move forward. For wherever faith remains, there is still a future. I believe if you keep your faith, you keep your trust, you keep the right attitude. If you're grateful, you'll see God open up new doors. Joel Osteen. People often walk through life with a strange paradox. They want miracles to appear, yet they let their souls sink into despair. They pray for new doors to open, but deep down, they have stopped believing that anything good still exists for them. And that is exactly how fear silently destroys the future, not through massive storms, but by making people lose hope bit by bit. A mind full of negativity is like a room locked for years. Even if the sun shines outside, the light cannot enter. What changes life is not just the circumstance, but the inner state we choose to face. That circumstance, faith does not make people blind. It makes them strong enough not to collapse in the face of temporary darkness. Those who hold on to faith are like lighthouses. In the night, sea storms may howl all around, but the light within remains unextinguished. Some lose opportunities not because they lack ability, but because they let bitterness wither their souls. When people focus only on what they lack, they gradually become exhausted, withdrawn, and hopeless. Gratitude, on the other hand, is a miraculous psychological strength. It does not deny suffering, but it helps people realize that even in the darkest days, life still holds things worth hoping for. A grateful person is like someone who can still see the stars despite a sky full of dark clouds, and it is that exact state that leaves their souls wide open to receive the new things God is preparing. Many believe that the great doors in life are opened by talent, money, or power, but sometimes they are opened by the quiet endurance of a heart that refuses to give up. Some doors do not open immediately because we need to grow before walking through them. A seed must lie beneath the soil in darkness before becoming a great tree. An eagle must endure fierce winds to learn how to fly high. And humans are no different. Sometimes God doesn't delay to deny you, but because He is preparing you for something greater than you ever imagined. The most beautiful thing about faith is that it keeps people moving forward even when they have not seen the results. They still live kindly when life is unfair. They stay grateful when everything is far from perfect. They keep the right attitude when others have already quit. And then one day, they realize new doors have opened without them even knowing when. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because they themselves have become strong enough, wise enough, and mature enough to step into the good things God has prepared for them. My faith didn't remove the pain, but it got me through the pain. Trusting God didn't diminish or vanquish the anguish, but it enabled me to endure it. Robert Rogers. Faith is not a shield that stops life from hurting us. Pain still comes, just as winter still blankets the fields in cold, just as storms still find the sea, despite the sailor's nightly prayers. Many once thought that believing in God meant life would be easier, that those with faith would be exempt from tears and despair. Even the most radiant souls can pass through the longest, darkest nights. It is a kind of strength very different from what people usually seek. We always want suffering to vanish instantly. We want every wound healed overnight. But sometimes, the miracle is not in the storm stopping, but in us still having enough strength to stand firm amidst it. Pain has the power to erode the soul, like seawater eroding rocks over time. It leaves people exhausted, cynical, and sometimes lost from themselves. There are nights when loneliness is so heavy that mere silence sounds like the breaking of the heart within. There are inexplicable losses, unanswered questions, wounds unseen by anyone, and the most terrifying part is when people feel they have to carry it all alone. But faith creates an invisible anchor for the soul. It doesn't make the darkness disappear, but it lets people know they are not walking through the dark alone. Like a small candle in a pitch-black room, its light may not be enough to change the whole world instantly, but it is enough to keep someone from sinking into despair. Faith helps people endure what, if relying purely on their own strength, would have crushed them long ago. Sometimes suffering itself turns a person into someone stronger, gentler, and more understanding. A great tree does not grow in windless days. It grows because seasons of storms force its roots deeper into the earth. So too do people. Those who have walked through pain with faith often carry a very different kind of peace. Not the peace of someone who has never cried, but the peace of someone who has wept profusely, yet continues to believe. Believing in God doesn't mean you will never shatter. It means that even when shattered, you will not completely collapse. There will always be a silent strength lifting you up, day by day, through the seemingly unbearable. And then one day, looking back at the road you've traveled, you realize what kept you alive wasn't that you were stronger than the pain, but that faith gave you the strength to keep walking despite a wounded heart. Love is a verb, and so is faith. Nannie Helen Burroughs. People often think of love as an emotion. They believe to love is to flutter, to have a pounding heart, to feel peace when beside someone. But emotions are fragile. They come like the tide and can retreat in silence. If love were merely an emotion, it would die in days of exhaustion, in times of disappointment, in moments when we simply feel nothing at all. That is why many say they once loved deeply, only to leave each other like strangers. Not because love never existed, but because they confused emotion with action. A verb is always tied to action. It demands choice, perseverance, and sacrifice. Loving is not just saying I love you or I care about you, but staying when everything gets hard. It is listening when you yourself are weary, forgiving when your ego wants retaliation, reaching out to lift someone up, even when you are hurting too. True love does not survive on promises, but on the things people do every single day. Many think faith is just a belief in the head, a prayer uttered in desperation, or a few beautiful words about God. But true faith always carries motion within it. A person with faith doesn't just say they believe in God. They live out what they believe. They keep walking even without seeing the results. They keep hoping amidst the darkest days. They keep standing back up after falls that seemed impossible to recover from. Faith is not sitting still, waiting for a miracle. Faith is continuing to sow seeds, even when winter still blankets the earth. The most profound truth is that both love and faith are most clearly proven through suffering. When everything goes well, anyone can claim to love and trust, but only when passing through disappointment, betrayal, loneliness, or loss is true character revealed. A small flame is only beautiful when seen in the dark night. A tree only knows how deep its roots are when the storm arrives. And so it is with people only in adversity. Do we know how deep our love is, how real our faith is? Perhaps that is what makes the strongest souls different. They don't just feel love or belief. They turn them into a way of life. They choose kindness when life makes them bitter. They choose hope when everything seems to fall apart. They choose to keep loving despite having been deeply wounded, because they understand that love and faith are not things for empty talk. They are silent, repeated actions every single day, and it is these actions that save a person from turning cold in this dark world. Believe in yourself, and the rest will fall into place. Have faith in your own abilities, work hard, and there is nothing you cannot accomplish. Brad Henry: some live their entire lives in an invisible cage created by their own minds. They do not fail from a lack of talent, but because they never truly believed they could do it. Self-doubt is a very silent kind of shackle. It doesn't scream in your head. It just constantly whispers, "I'm not good enough. I'm just going to fail. Others are so much better than me." And the greatest danger is that when we listen to those words for too long, we start to see them as the truth. From then on, they shrink their dreams, limit their own abilities, and stand still, watching life pass by with a sense of regret. How a person views themselves determines how they walk through life. Someone who doesn't believe in themselves often gives up too soon. They stop right in front of the door of opportunity, simply because they think they are unworthy to enter. On the contrary, those who believe in their abilities will keep moving forward even before anyone recognizes them. Believing in oneself does not mean thinking you are perfect. It is the ability to see your own potential even when the present is still full of flaws, like a tiny seed resting beneath dark soil, looking fragile and insignificant on the outside, yet carrying within the power to become a great tree reaching for the sky. So many people fail not because they lack capability, but because they dig up their own seeds too early, right before they have a chance to sprout. Work hard. Life does not pave the way for lazy illusions. Self-belief only truly holds value when paired with action. A ship cannot cross the ocean simply by believing in the wind. It needs its sails hoisted, and a sailor who tirelessly steers. The most successful people are rarely the smartest. They are the most persistent. They accept long, exhausting days, painful failures, moments of being doubted and looked down upon, yet they keep pushing forward. The strange thing is that the world usually changes how it looks at you after you change how you look at yourself. When someone begins to believe in their own value, they walk differently, talk differently, act differently. That energy is like a flame. It spreads and makes others start to see the capabilities within you, too. Because true confidence is not boastful noise. It is the calm of someone who knows where they are going. Life will always have walls that seem insurmountable, but many limits actually only exist in the mind. What stops people the most is not their circumstances, but the fear of failure and the belief that they are not good enough. And the moment a person dares to believe in themselves, dares to work with all they have, dares to keep going despite trembling with fear, they are already stronger than most of what once held them back. The only thing standing between an ordinary person and the life they dream of is the belief that they truly can do it. Doubt is a pain too lonely to know that faith is his twin brother. Khalil Gibran. People often think of faith and doubt as two opposite extremes. Where there is faith, there is no longer doubt. And where there is doubt, faith is dead. Those who have never truly doubted sometimes have never truly believed. Doubt is born when a person stands in the dark, unable to see the path ahead. It is the feeling of someone who has prayed for so long, yet life remains silent. It is when the heart asks, "Do all my efforts mean anything?" It is those nights when hope becomes as fragile as a candle in a gale. Doubt hurts because it makes people feel trapped between two worlds, not certain enough to be at peace, yet not detached enough to turn away completely. It is the solitude of a soul searching for a light it cannot yet touch. But right there, faith is born. Because faith is not the state of someone who always has every answer. Faith is the choice to keep walking even when there are no answers at all. A person who has never been through doubt often holds a very shallow belief, like a ship that is only beautiful when resting quietly in the harbor. Only when facing a storm do we know if that ship has what it takes to sail. And only by passing through days filled with skepticism do we know how deep our faith truly is. What makes doubt so painful is that it makes people feel alienated from hope itself. They look at others who are full of trust and wonder why they themselves are so weak. But in reality, the strongest souls are often those who have fought the fiercest battles with the doubt inside them. They didn't hold on to their faith because it never wavered. They held on to it because, despite the wavering, they refused to completely abandon the light. Doubt and faith coexist like darkness and dawn. Darkness does not prove the sun has vanished. Sometimes it is merely the interval before the light appears more clearly. Faith is not about completely eliminating every question from the mind. It is the ability to carry those questions and still continue to live, continue to love, continue to hope. Like a mountain climber amidst thick fog, they cannot see the summit, yet they still place each footstep forward. And perhaps that is the truest form of faith. Not the faith of someone who has never felt pain, but the faith of someone who has walked through solitude, doubt, and disorientation, yet still keeps a small flicker of light in their heart, a flicker enough to keep from sinking completely into darkness. Because sometimes what makes people great is not that they have never doubted, but that they still choose to believe, even when doubt is screaming inside their minds. If you believe in yourself and feel confident in yourself, you can do anything. I really believe that. Karlie Kloss. People often start life with a silent question. Am I enough? Good enough? Strong enough? Smart enough? Worthy enough to step into things greater than the present. And that very question, if not answered properly, will gradually turn into an invisible limit. It's not the world closing its doors on us, but us shrinking ourselves before we even have a chance to walk through any of them. Belief is not just a feeling, but the foundation of action. A person who doesn't believe in their abilities will always see the hurdles before seeing the opportunities. Conversely, a person with belief will see the path even when its shape is still unclear. Confidence is not the illusion that one will not fail. Confidence is the ability to stand firm even when failure occurs. It is like an invisible spine that keeps a person from collapsing under pressure. Because the reality is, life never guarantees the outcome, but it always responds to the level of persistence and how people face themselves. Someone who believes in themselves won't stop just because of one mistake. They view mistakes as data, not as a death sentence. The fascinating thing is that self-belief isn't something you're born with, but something built through every small action. Every time you dare to try, every time you dare to step out of your comfort zone, every time you dare to keep going, despite exhaustion, each is a brick building, the structure of confidence. And when that structure is sturdy enough, people begin to change how they view the world. Things that previously seemed impossible suddenly become possible if I just try a little harder. But it must also be understood that doing anything is not absolute power. It does not mean humans can control every outcome. It means that humans can maximize their potential in any circumstance. There are things beyond our control, but how we respond to them is entirely up to us. And it is right at that intersection between limits and effort that life is truly shaped. There are people who live their whole lives shrinking away, not because they are weak, but because they have never allowed themselves to believe they could be strong. Self-belief is like a fire. If it is never lit, one will forever live in the cold, even holding enough fuel in their hands to warm the entire room. But once that fire is nurtured, it not only warms them, but also spreads out, emboldening them to step further, try more, and live more fully. And then, a very special moment occurs in everyone's life when they realize that what they once feared most wasn't failure, but having never believed in themselves long enough to see how far they could go. When belief is placed correctly, people do not become invincible. They simply stop limiting themselves. And that is exactly when the door to true possibilities begins to open. God never said that the journey would be easy, but He did say that the arrival would be worthwhile. Max Lucado. There are phases in life when all we want is one thing, an easy path, a path without stumbles, without losses, without trading too many tears. But life has never operated that way. It is not a flat corridor, but a journey of many steep slopes, many blind curves, where one can only see a tiny fraction of the future at any given moment. Hardship is not a sign of making mistakes. Sometimes, it is an inevitable part of the growing process. If everything were easy, people would never understand where their true strength lies. Each person's journey is like climbing a high mountain in the fog. No one sees the entire trail from the start. There are steps that must be taken in weariness, in doubt, and even in solitude. There are times when it feels like we are heading the wrong way because we don't see immediate results. But it is precisely in those uncertain moments that human nature is forged perseverance, faith, and the ability to keep walking despite not seeing the destination. God did not promise that the burden would vanish, but He grants us the strength to carry it, not by erasing the trials, but by placing in the human heart a reason grand enough to never give up. Because if the destination held no value, no one would have the patience to trek through such exhausting stretches of the road. But when people believe that the end of the journey is worthwhile, even the heaviest steps become meaningful. The hardest paths to walk often lead to the most profound places. The experiences that nearly crush us become the foundation for a maturity that no easy path could ever create. Someone who has never been through trials often has a shallow peace, while one who has weathered the storm carries a very different kind of peace, the peace of knowing they did not quit. There are times when people only see today and forget the destination. Blinded by the pressure of the present, they assume all efforts are meaningless. But faith, whether in a spiritual or mental sense, constantly reminds us that a larger picture is still being painted. Not every day has to be easy, but every day can hold meaning if we continue to press forward. And then, looking back, people often realize that the stretches they thought impossible to cross were, in fact, the most crucial ones. Not because they were pleasant, but because they shaped them into a stronger, deeper, and more steadfast version of themselves. The destination, then, is not merely a physical place, but a state of being for someone forged by their very journey and true to the promise. It is worthy of everything they have endured. Faith is invisible, but it can be felt. Faith is strength when we feel we have none. Faith is hope when all seems lost. Catherine Pulsifer. There are things in human life that cannot be grasped, cannot be measured, yet bear a weight far greater than any material object. Faith belongs to that special kind of existence, invisible as the air, yet it is what keeps people from collapsing when everything around them becomes suffocating, when reason is depleted, when the body is exhausted, when emotions have hit rock bottom. At that boundary, we either surrender entirely or find an anchor beyond ourselves. Faith is not a state of absolute certainty. It does not erase the darkness, but it ensures we are no longer swallowed by it. Like a small flame in a massive, lightless room, it doesn't illuminate the entire space immediately, but it is enough for a person to know they still exist, are still moving, are still have a direction, so as not to be completely lost. There are moments in life when people feel entirely drained of strength. The body continues to step, but the soul wants to stop. It is in those exact moments that faith becomes a very strange kind of power. Not loud, not boastful, but enduring. It does not arrive to remove the burden, but to help a person carry that burden just a little further down the road, and then a little further, until what seemed unbearable is finally crossed. The hope that faith brings is not a blind optimism that everything will be fine right away. It is the ability to believe that the present is not the entire story, that even when all doors seem to have shut, something is still operating at a deeper layer of life, something we cannot yet see, but can still place our trust in. People usually only realize the value of faith when standing on the borderline of despair, when all plans fail, when all advice no longer helps, when even they themselves lack the strength to pull themselves up. That is when faith ceases to be a theory and becomes the final breath, keeping them from sinking. It is like an invisible hand catching someone who is falling, not to stop them from falling forever, but to give them a chance to stand once more. Looking back at the journey past, people are often amazed to realize they have gone much further than what they once thought was their limit, not because they were absolutely strong, but because in their weakest moments, there was always something, a silent belief, that held them, guided them forward, and reminded them that even when all seems lost, hope has never truly vanished.